drinks, and jackpot.
Within an hour we had 400,000 classified US documents on a USB stick.
James Ball couldn't believe his luck.
I was absolutely shocked. That's quite a big thing. I mean, this was sensitive stuff.
Over the next few months, working closely with Julian Assange, James Ball and his colleagues pored over those documents, US battlefield reports from Iraq. It was a massive story for a young journalist to work on. And when Julian Assange dangled the next big scoop he was planning, James Ball jumped at the chance to join Wikileaks to work on it full-time. He found himself among a young team.
About 8 people tops, and most of them had only been there a month or two.
With little or no experience of serious investigative journalism, but doing exactly that.
It was chaotic. I mean, we were working out of this guy's front room in the middle of Norfolk.
What they were working on was astonishing. They'd been given 250,000 secret messages sent by US diplomats. James Ball and his new colleagues were under pressure.
There were rumours that we had them, so we didn't have long. And so you would turn on the TV, it would be talking about what you were doing.
We think that they may have 260,000 State Department diplomatic cables.
It's time that the Obama administration treats Wikileaks for what it is, a terrorist organization whose continued operation threatens our security. Shut it down, shut it down, shut it down, Attorney General Holder.
No one knew where we were at this point, so everyone was speculating about where you would hold up. People on TV were calling for you to be shut down or to be killed.
We got special ops forces. I mean, the dead man can't leak stuff. Illegally shoot the son of a...
What was the atmosphere like in the room?
It was quite electrifying. It's not often that you realise that half the world is actually talking about what you're doing.
And Julian Assange was at the centre of this.
Absolutely at the centre of it. People drift in and out, and Julian is the constant, and really the only person ever who's made the decisions.
Julian Assange was by now a well-known and controversial figure, and not only for his work on Wikileaks. He'd been accused of rape and sexual assault in Sweden, arrested and bailed. He's consistently denied the allegations, which he says are a ruse to extradite him to the United States. In this highly charged atmosphere, working on a story the whole world seemed to be waiting for, James Ball began to observe his new boss more closely.
Editors I've worked with everywhere else. As you get to know them, you might just quietly go, I wonder if we could do this differently, or is that a good idea, maybe we should do this instead.
You challenge them?
Yeah, and not disrespectfully, but you challenge. And he didn't want that. He wanted his will to be done.
What happens if you did challenge him?
You would get quite aggressively shouted down. The meeting would move on, but you would be out of favour for hours or for a day or two, passed over when he was chatting to everyone, quite cold.
Eventually, James Ball fell out of favour completely. He no longer works for Wikileaks. According to our expert witness then, Julian Assange can be a difficult, complex man. His personal circumstances remain complex too. He's never been to Sweden to be questioned over the sex allegations. Instead, he sought asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, where he's been holed up for over 4 years. But what are his political beliefs? That's perhaps a fairer or more relevant question. What drives Julian Assange?
So he would say it's transparency. He would say he's libertarian and all power should be accountable.
But James Ball thinks one of Julian Assange's overriding motivations is simply to make a splash.
You know, he's stuck in the back bedroom of a second-floor flat in the Ecuadorian embassy. What would eat away at his mental image is this sense that he's kind of lost his yesterday's man. So this sense that you're still a big player on the world stage despite it is quite a reinforcing internal narrative, isn't it?
That's just James Ball's opinion, of course. Julian Assange has other critics who've made more serious allegations. They say that WikiLeaks stories target Democrats in the US, not Republicans. The US and the West, not Russia. Could Julian Assange be selecting his targets for political reasons? James Ball doesn't think so.
I think Assange will publish what he gets. I think it's in his blood.
That begs perhaps the most important question of all. If Julian Assange will publish whatever he gets, where is he getting his information from?
Part 4. The Secret Source.
Our final expert witness describes himself as
somewhat obsessive. Like, so I get an idea and I can't let it go.
Chris Zappone is a foreign news editor at The Age newspaper in Melbourne. An American in Australia, he watched in fascination as the recent US election campaign unfolded.
As far back as 2015, that there was talk that Wikileaks had some sort of dirt on Hillary Clinton that was going to make it really hard for her in the campaign. As we got into the election year, sure enough, there were outfits that sort of appeared out of nowhere that had access to emails and to documents from the Democratic Party or people that were related to the Democratic Party. And it's into this world that Assange started to release thousands of emails.
The contents of the emails weren't all that revelatory, he says. The bigger story was the timing.
The streams of embarrassing materials that is being produced right in time for the election, so it looks like there's a tactic to it.
The US intelligence services investigated the Democratic National Committee, or DNC, leaks. Their conclusion?
Based on uniform intelligence assessments, the Russians were responsible for hacking the DNC.
The leaks had
all the forensic fingerprints of Russian hackers.
The US authorities believe Russia was trying to influence the American election through Wikileaks.
It has made me conclude that Wikileaks is essentially, I don't know if this is the intention, but it functions as an anti-state, and particularly anti-Western state organization.
Unlike our last expert witness, Chris Zappone doesn't rule out the possibility that Julian Assange is sympathetic to America's old foe, Russia.
He's had a show on RT, so the Russian-sponsored foreign language media network. He's boasted of having a role in helping the former NSA contractor Edward Snowden find his way to Russia and counseling Snowden to go to Russia.
Julian Assange, the Russian state, gave him the material. He told Fox News, "Our source is not the Russian government, and it is not a state party." If you pay close attention to what Julian Assange says, though, it leaves open the possibility his source was Russian, just not the Russian state. And Chris Zappone believes the leak, with its timing and its target, does have all the hallmarks of a Russian orchestrated campaign.
One of the strategies in Russian information warfare is that you hit the public from many different angles with similar messages. So rather than the old day of Pravda in issuing the statement, this is officially what the Russian government believes, instead of that, what you have is multiple channels saying the same thing.
He could imagine Russia feeding material to numerous small websites that carry the first few emails, so the story begins to gather pace, and then
WikiLeaks kicks in, this information is recycled and picked up. That gives it more legitimacy to be picked up by media in the West, and the next thing you know, you've got 200 stories live online around the world echoing or repeating the same thing, and that literally changes the reality that we live in.
And to Russia, he says, WikiLeaks might look like the perfect vehicle.
One theme of Russian propaganda is that they will promote any storyline that makes you question the credibility and the authority of Western governments and institutions. And in this way, WikiLeaks has really fit the bill.
We've spent some time exploring the inner workings of WikiLeaks and what the motivations of the man behind it, Julian Assange, might be. But maybe this story isn't actually about what goes on inside the whistleblowing website.
It's very possible that everything we've seen in the past year from WikiLeaks, it's not really about Assange at all, and it's not really about WikiLeaks being a revolutionary force for transparency at all.
Maybe it's about the agenda of those who feed material to WikiLeaks. The website exists, in its words, to open governments, to reveal classified information, uncomfortable national secrets and corruption. Many journalists would support those aims. But if you commit to publishing the leaks you're sent, you make yourself vulnerable. Vulnerable to being used by states hoping to weaken rivals by hacking sensitive information and dropping it in your lap. That could be Russia. It could be anyone. So can you believe what you read on Wikileaks? Yes, probably. But you can't be sure who wanted you to read it, or why.
3 o'clock in London, good morning and welcome to news on the BBC World Service.
Coming up, hacked smartphones and televisions turn into listening devices. We'll hear about the online revelations set to shed light on the CIA's cyber spying.
It's the site's first dump of U.S. intelligence documents since Donald Trump became president.
Julian Assange of Wikileaks says he has decided to give the details of the CIA hacking tools to tech companies.
The Central Intelligence Agency lost control of its entire cyber weapons arsenal. Now, this is a historic act of devastating incompetence to have created such an arsenal and stored it all in one place.
As in any military operation, there is an objective. Would Brad Manning further normalize sex change, that which is unnatural? With this character, privatization. The situation is not unlike the pedophile, where you have all these groups lining up to garnish support that they had previously lost from the public.
A lot of work after the Snowden release to begin to rebuild trust.
Operations will only strengthen by the pedophile's existence, which, of course, is representative of capitalism as a whole. So this guy is no exception. Let's examine this situation. Okay, we're being told primarily about Samsung TVs. This is news that came out years ago.
So the particular techniques in here, and I'd say for people who follow what's going on in digital security, they're not particularly surprising.
So, you know, I hear the BBC talking about, oh, the terrorists know about the plan now. Like the terrorist, or whoever the terrorist happens to be this week, is going to be buying a Samsung Smart TV.
This is huge.
And to think that this cat coming along, you know, is
huge. In terms of what it will tell the adversaries, and we'll have to essentially start over in building tools to get information from our adversaries, just like we did with Snowden.
And yet, he found refuge in the city of London.
You know, certainly a lot of Americans wondering, at least.
Right. I think the basic issue here is there's nothing in what we've seen, which is different than Snowden, frankly. There's nothing in what we've seen so far that suggests these tools are being used on Americans.
Anything with the chip in it, which is all digital products, you gotta understand, the governments are working with the manufacturers. They always did.
To solve the cybersecurity challenge that we face, we have got to collaborate, the public and private sector. At this point, we have private sector entities that are having to defend themselves against nation states right now.
Yeah.
An IV today is networked. How'd you like to be up on an IV and somebody hacks into your IV? Not so exciting and doesn't give you a lot of confidence. We need to make sure police cars aren't hacked into. We need to make sure, I mean, these are real everyday problems that need to be solved.
See, in a capitalist state, the wealthiest influence the governments which control production.
A lot of this stuff is commercial. A lot of the CIA's technology is bought in Silicon Valley or in Israel.
The people who know how business works, especially in a capitalist economy, the governments are
This just came out. WikiLeaks! I love WikiLeaks!
By the wealthiest individuals on the earth. These are not just individuals that live here. They don't have allegiance. Their mechanism of control through the common law system deriving from And in this way, they have maintained dominion over peoples. The IT, information technology corporations, are among the most wealthiest corporations on the planet and the fastest growing. So their job is not done. The information technologies have brought more power to the ruling classes than any other company on the face of the earth in all of history. They have the power to control people's minds, and ever more so as we move forward in the future.
We got into another category of consumer products which we think will become increasingly vulnerable to so-called Internet of Things products like the Samsung Smart TV or even an internet router, and you begin to wonder, well, who's going to be responsible for that update? Is it going to be the end user of the product? Is it going to be the person who's providing the service to the product? And I suspect that over time, those points of vulnerability will be increasingly exploited.
And those manufacturers are given incentives to come up with products that allow for the governments who are working for the ruling classes, Rothschilds, to tap to whatever and whoever.
Now, they can get a hold of your phone and take over your phone in a way that such that they can read the message at the same time you do.
Little being said about GCHQ, the organization which collects information of Americans. Mr. Edward Snowden described this process. People see this technology as a black box, man's miracle on Earth. And yet, it has been developed from centuries of war, men competing against one another based on race, nations, in classes, and their taskmasters oppressing the masses of impoverished people on the bottom to extract labor. Throughout the scripture, we learn of idolatry, the act of man worshiping that which he has made with his hands. This form of idolatry has become the gods of the elite, bringing their fleshly desires.
Hi, thank you very much for taking my call. I get really angry when I hear a lot of Americans say that they're worried about their privacy, they're worried about... The one thing I do, I believe in our system. I believe in the CIA, I believe in the DOJ, FBI, DLT, and I want them to continue to do the work they do, all right? So.
And in doing so, they justify their actions by saying, well, this country will tap this country, and this country will tap this country, and the information will be shared. Because as long as the law exists, but there's a way to get around.
You know, you're not going to get people in the CIA to go after an American without a warrant from court, a FISA warrant. It's just impossible.
Then the privileged people will do just that. Those benefits with them.
If you're not doing anything wrong, then you don't have anything to worry about. That's the way I look at it. I'd rather them secure this country more than by worrying about whether they're looking in my window or something like that. And I have a son that's in intelligence. He tells me all the time that they work very hard to follow the laws and prevent American information from getting into their hands. They work extremely hard. They don't.
Ray, you have an interesting point.
Know that all the Babylon digital device containing the chip is accessible, whether or not it's connected to any network.
We have to be prepared that somebody may very well be able to get access to that kind of information, and if they do, that they will make it public.
That's how the manufacturers are building these products, so that they can be remotely accessed through a satellite.
It come as a surprise to the tech industry because the CIA and the National Security Agency depend on flaws in the software. Most intelligence these days, including the military, is based on telephone collection, and so they want these vulnerabilities to remain in the phone.
I said the key of knowledge. The ruling classes have the ability to know where you are, what you're doing, and your life consists of, so long as you use any digital products. And basically, almost anything with a machine or a motor.
A smartphone is vulnerable to hacking. Very easy to get into. And any phone can be taken over by malware and information bled out of it on a separate line. It's vulnerable. We don't know what the Russians can do or the Chinese.
Looking in the other direction, not towards the ruling classes.
The timing and say someone intentionally wants to distract from, other political conversations around intelligence in the United States.
When we're focused on the CIA having the access to smart devices, what we're not taking into account is that all that information, what you say, your conversation, your personal conversation with your wife and your family, is being stored into that device and being passed on to be used to build up the Antichrist.
Well, they're in the process of trying, as this controversy over fake news has reached such heights, so many people are looking for ways of dealing with it. And one of the ways that has been floated is through what's called artificial intelligence.
So long as people are cognizant that their information is being taken, they will be reluctant to share certain information. And that's exactly what these technology companies don't want.
Most intelligence these days, including the military, is based on telephone collection. And so they want these vulnerabilities to remain in the phone, and especially if they're using telephones to target drone assassinations.
It's not some rogue agency sitting behind a computer in a cave somewhere that's secretly, finding out what you're saying. No, this is everybody. Seeing what all individuals are doing.
Primary purpose is bulk signals collection, SIGINT, and then analyzing and processing and searching that SIGINT.
And the way that societies and different cultures are shifting and conforming those cultures. The Babylon Man devices are always breaking down so that we have to buy new devices. This is all because they have to improve their technology to make it accessible for them, but not for us.
Well, Jane, I don't think it should have come as a surprise to the tech industry because the CIA and the National Security Agency depend on flaws in the software.
Babylon Man always has us updating.
The initial word we're hearing is that a lot of this stuff they had already caught in previous updates. But the trick of that for the average consumer is a lot of people, depending on what system you use, don't update their phones that much. And so some of these exploits, even if they were previously known and dealt with by the companies, may not have been dealt with by the actual users of these phones.
Is it possible for someone to use the information that's been leaked in these WikiLeaks documents to get into my phone or my computer or my car's onboard computer? What do you say?
Sure. Well, of course, it depends quite a bit. I mean, the best answer that we've been giving to people who've been calling this week is that you should always upgrade the operating system. People need to update their software.
These companies that claim that you can send your information and it's not going to be seen by anybody are a straight out lie. And they're getting support, man, because it just goes to show you how capital environment works.
There's absolutely a role for it, but again, it's a complicated thing. Facebook in particular employs many contractors who are tasked with identifying material on the network that is not suitable and removing it.
However, they know they can lose it all, the Babylon Man. And so the Babylon Man is treading very carefully right now. Try to get the public to believe in his plan.
So there's nothing really all that new in here. And in fact, to the extent that there was something somewhat surprising, but good news for us, is that the encrypted apps like Signal and WhatsApp, the government doesn't appear to be able to crack those.
These tech companies are taking your information. And if you think that your information is not going to be seen by anyone and you're sending it, guess what?
Look at WikiLeaks history. They have partnered with traditional news organizations in the past, and they seem to be suggesting, look, we can give you good stories if you partner with us.
You just put a premium on it. They're gonna bank, and you're gonna pay.
Rule is just do not ever use a cell phone. Don't have it in a room with you. Don't have it. Nothing is safe. Use a landline or send it by the post office.
By the way, What Crap is owned by Facebook.
Ben, you're on the air. Welcome to On Point.
And how much of the recklessness of this decision to create this system by the CIA is generated by, the private commercialization of our military, and how much is that decision to create that generated by commercial need to sell backdoor access to other parties.
The NSA is a branch of the military. Knowing that the military serves for cash, and knowing that the technology companies have the bulk of cash.
We need flaws in the international smartphone market to get intelligence. Otherwise, we're pretty much blind, and it's truly that stark.
All this information is being taken from all people.
Tech companies now know the flaws.
And as long as you choose to use those devices, eventually we'll have so many people around them with all those devices on them that you really won't be able to talk to anybody without giving your conversation away.
My cell phone is being used by the government to spy on me.
Ray, cell phone location technology. A lot of that technology was developed by and for the CIA, and what eventually happened over a period of many years was that technology was shared with the other government agencies. First in Iraq, and then it expanded so that now your local police force has it. If you've built these tools, what prevents, the tools from eventually being used on Americans?
Need some kind of rule.
If they're using telephones to target drone assassinations,
obviously.
National Security Agency, and they point to the fact that in these documents, the CIA has the capability of mimicking Russian hacking. That the Russians were framed for hacking the DNC and Hillary Clinton's emails.
I want to ask you.
And one thing too is, right? I mean, this technology is given foreign governments. So if you give it to Jordan's not going to use it just against terrorists.
The Babylon man gets the information and puts it into, or gives it to the Antichrist to develop this artificial intelligence to be the king judge over all Babylon and Babylonians. And those that choose to follow the Babylonian way.
It looks like not only is that material being spread around contractors and former American computer hackers for hire, but now maybe in the black market.
So let us take heed.
Wikileaks founder Julian Assange says he will work with technology companies to help to defend them against the CIA's hacking tools. He says the material has been easy to get.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it's a lot of information, and it's extremely troubling that the CIA was keeping all of this information rather than giving it to the tech companies so that they could fix these problems and make us all safer.
There are certainly some vulnerabilities out there that I'm sure these tech companies would love to know and they'd like to patch right away to keep their users happy and keep them safe. So it's really imperative to share that information. Good to hear that will be happening.
You just have 10 seconds, but Julian Assange now saying he'll share the code with tech companies so they can close their vulnerabilities.
That's good news. That's good news, and the CIA should have done it a long time ago. The idea that the CIA knew about this problem, that this information got out of their control last year and doesn't appear to have told the tech companies is, I think, shameful. And people need to really turn to the CIA and ask them why aren't they standing with tech companies and with the American people and people around the world.
Hi, Dan. Welcome to the program.
Howdy, Gene. I think that no one has to worry about the CIA
plug in their phones or anything that's less involved in anything political, like some of the political groups in this country, going back in history where the national security people have tapped phones, the FBI, the CIA. I wouldn't be nervous about anything with the CIA, but I don't think they're honest brokers. When you look at what they've done in other countries, they made America more unsafe than anything that any other person can do as far as kidnapping presidents, like in Honduras and Haiti, and taking them off to exile. And like just in Iran, they most of that and installed a dictator. I mean, people remember that stuff over there. That doesn't make America safe.
Hi, you're on the air. Welcome.
Hi, Jane. Thanks for taking my call. You know, what I wonder about is how come no one has come up and asked, how come it is that I have to protect myself not only from the evil doers, from the government? You know, how it is that my cell phone is being used by the government to spy on me.
Well, we don't know that. That's not exactly what they're saying, but I know a lot of people are worried about that. We've heard that this hour, Devlin.
The whole thing with Brad Manning is a psyop. Brad Manning, that's what the power of the internet has done, to make people believe that they're fighting for their right to, excuse me, you know, companies like Crap Snap and What's Crap, you know, companies like Crap Chat and What Crap or whatever.
You know, you're not going to get people in the CIA to go after an American without a warrant from court, a FISA warrant. It's just impossible.
We have the oldest law known to mankind, and it has been given to us from I creator, Selassie, the first, who manifested himself in this time. So one must only ask, logically, who is the one hiding?
The Wikileaks claim started. It says it now possesses CIA software that can be used to break into almost any electronic device. Just one example is what the CIA apparently calls Weeping Angel, which involves a Samsung TV that connects to the internet. The owner thinks the TV is turned off, but in reality, it's still on and is being used as a listening device. Wikileaks also says the CIA has developed the ability to bypass popular encryption apps such as Signal and Telegram. The CIA declined to comment on the documents, which allegedly came from the agency's Center for Cyber Intelligence. And here's what White House spokesman Sean Spicer said.
I'm not going to comment on that. I think, obviously, that's something that has not been fully evaluated. If it was, I would not comment from here on that.
But given the Wikileaks track record, many are taking the claim seriously. Here's former CIA Director Michael Hayden speaking on MSNBC.
If it is what it pretends to be, it would be very, very damaging.
WikiLeaks says the CIA material was circulating among hackers and former U.S. government contractors. One of them came to WikiLeaks saying he wanted to launch a public debate about cyber weapons. That scenario has echoes of Edward Snowden, the contractor with the National Security Agency who unveiled details of its surveillance program 4 years ago. WikiLeaks said it's still evaluating the documents and plans additional disclosures in what it's calling Vault 7. However, WikiLeaks did not release the actual hacking software and left open the question of whether it ever would. This episode has the potential to add to the already complicated relationship between President Trump and the intelligence community. During the presidential campaign, Trump and his team cheered on WikiLeaks as it dribbled out Democratic Party emails. Now the president will have to deal with the potential fallout from WikiLeaks revelations about his own CIA.
Selassie, strength.